Okay, we're recording The Wild and Exotic Adventures of a Wasp, starring Don Anderson. You've had many jobs over the years. Have you ever counted how many jobs you've had from beginning to end? Sat down and kind of listed them out?
How much time you got?
What was your first job?
My first job out of college.
No, before college. You must have had a job before college. Like, what was the first thing that you actually made, money at?
Well, when I was a kid growing up, I worked, I had paper routes. I worked in a local dress shop, packing, unpacking stuff.
I think the paper route, though, was the first
real job, I think, was that.
Where was the paper route? Was it around Utica Street?
No, it was downtown Jamestown. There were a lot of apartments up over the stores and up over the bars, and that was my first route. So I delivered papers there. We called them the crummy apartments. And then on Saturday, I had to go there and collect. Back in those days, I think it was 25 cents a week, and you got
sounds like a lot, but
5 papers. So anyhow, I would have to go in there, and more than once, I'd go to knock on someone. First of all, the places stunk like you can't believe. But I'd go in there, and there would be the guy or woman sometimes, who lived there, asleep on the stairs outside of their apartment. And I had to kind of shake him. And sometimes I had no money, but often, sometimes they give me $1 because they didn't know what the hell they were doing. But that was my first entrepreneurship.
Do you remember how old you were?
I had to be like maybe 13, 14, 15, something like that.
So that was kind of your first.
I think the first time I ever earned real money was with the paper route.
Well, we'll have another podcast. Maybe you can make some notes of every job you've ever had, and we'll kind of go through those.
All right.
I've wanted to do that myself because I've had a number of.
Yeah.
Y'all work at a lot of jobs. I lived at a lot of places. That's another fun list.
That's another
place to make. But well, let's go into some stories about kind of work related things. Something about some glasses.
Yeah. I worked for about 12 or 13 years as a rep for a furniture company. And that was located in Jamestown, where I grew up. And my job was to travel New York State and call on all the furniture retailers and try to convince them to buy my product, which is called Crawford Furniture, located in Jamestown. So I would go and make presentations in the store, and then hopefully they would buy from me, and that's the way the thing worked. Well, at one point, I'm up in the Adirondacks, and I called in a furniture store, and I'm one of those odd people who takes their glasses off to read. I need them for distance, not for reading. So I took my glasses off, I put them in the inside pocket of my suit jacket, and I was going over the thing, catalog pages, make my presentation, and at one point, I reached my arm across the front of my body, and I heard a cracking noise. And I said to myself, God, I've broken my glasses. So I went out and got in the car after I'd finished my presentation, and sure enough, I had cracked the plastic glasses, not the lens, but just the frames.
Right between the two glasses, so.
No, it was right up in the edge near the.
So one side of the glasses, you cracked it, so that one side would be that one.
It was right
frame,
up near the temple.
That one lens would be falling out.
Right. So I drove to the next town, which I think might have been Tupper Lake, and there was a little optical guy there. So I went in and I said, I've done this. I said, do you have a frame that would fit this style of lenses? And she looked and said, no, we don't have anything like that. She said, you're going to have to go to a bigger place, probably Lake Placid might have something like that. And I said, well, okay. But I said, I'm not supposed to drive with my glasses on. She said, look, I'll tell you what, I've got this super glue here, and we'll put the super glue in there, put it back together again, and you have to let it dry a little bit, and then that'll hold until you get to Lake Placid, which is, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours from there. So I said, okay, but I had an appointment up in Lake Placid, so I didn't wait too long. I put the glasses on, I drive up there. I kept them on while I had the appointment, and then I found another optician's place. And I went there and explained my problem. She said, yes, we have a new frame, we'll be able to fit it. So I go to take the glasses off. They are super glued to my eyebrow. I could not get the glasses off. So finally, I knew I had to, so finally I just yanked them off. In the process of doing that, I took about a 1/4 inch off my eyebrow.
Are you bleeding?
And they're bleeding, I'm bleeding down, it's going down on my shirt collar. I couldn't believe how much blood came out of there. So the woman, the chef, she runs and she gets some towels and we get it all sopped up. I was a mess. I had to cancel all my appointments for the rest of the day and go back to the motel and get cleaned up. But I'll tell you, it hurt like hell. God, I almost cried. It
I was
hurt
going to
so
say, did you go to the doctor? You probably pulled off a little piece of skin and.
well, a little piece of skin.
Did you
I
put
had
a-
all the hair on it from the eyebrow.
Did you put a Band-Aid on it eventually, or what did
No,
you do?
I think I just kept towels on it or whatever, but I was a mess. All because I didn't have enough patience
Yeah.
to let the super glue dry before I put the damn glasses back on again.
Classic. All right.
Yeah.
Well, I think the next one might take a little bit, but something happened in physical at Clifton Springs. Was that what job was that?
All right, this is I worked for C.H. Stewart out of Newark, and I was the vice president of personnel out there. So my duties were pretty wide and varied. But one of the things I was responsible for was administering the executive physical program. All the executives of a certain level took an annual physical to make sure they were staying fit and all this sort of thing.
So you had to arrange that. You were head of personnel, so you had to arrange all the executives
Right.
taking a physical, which I'm sure they weren't big fans of having to do that.
Well, some of them appreciated it. It was a good deal to get the company to pay for your annual physical. Anyhow, as I recall, we gave them 3 options. One was they could go to their local physician and have it done, or they could go to Strong Hospital, which is a huge teaching hospital in Rochester, or they could go to the Clifton Springs Hospital, which is a hospital located in a relatively small town not too far from Newark, where C.H. Stewart was located. But as I went back over the records, I'm looking at this whole thing, I saw that nobody ever went to Clifton Springs. And I asked around, they said, well, you go there sometime, you'll find out. So when it came time for my physical, I said, okay, I'm going to Clifton Springs to find out whether or not we should keep them on the list. So I went there, and they did all the usual stuff, the blood pressure, and they took blood and all this sort of thing. And then they said, okay, Mr. Anderson, it's now time for your proctology examination. And I said, what is that? And they said, well, we're going to insert this long tube into your anus and see whether or not you have any polyps in there. But first of all, we have to clean you out. So he said, we're going to give you a fleet enema. And then once you get yourself cleaned out, then we'll do the proctology exam. So
Did you know what an enema was at the time?
oh yeah, it was
Okay.
called a fleet enema, where they squirt this stuff into your behind.
Yeah.
So the nurse came and she gets this big thing and she squirts it into me, and then she says, "Well, wait here until it starts to work, and then we'll take care of it." So I lay there. The pressure starts to build, and it builds, and it builds, and it builds. Finally, I yelled out to a nurse, "I gotta get to the John and get rid of this stuff." So she said, "Okay, come on, mister." On the way in, she hands me a paper cup, and she says, "We're going to need a stool sample." So I rush in there, I pull my pants down, and boom, I exploded. In the meantime, I got my hand down between my legs trying to catch a little bit of the stool sample.
I don't think much stool must have been left there. It would have
Oh,
been a.
God, I mean, my whole arm was covered. I was a mess. I thought I was going to die before. Well, I got myself all cleaned up, and I came out with this little cup. And she said, "Mr. Anderson, you could have just dipped it in the bowl after you were all done. You didn't have to catch it on the way out." And then I had my proctology where they hoist your back end up and they stick this thing in your behind. I said, "Okay, we're canceling Clifton Springs. Nobody's doing that."
But
anymore.
that didn't happen. You don't think it must have happened in some fashion.
No, they did it a different way. They had
Well, these days it's not a tube anymore. The doctor has a rubber glove, and you can use your rest of the imagination for that. And that's
But I think they have a more flexible. If this thing was a long steel rod, I swear to God, it's about a foot long and maybe a half inch. And Bum buddy bum bada bum bada bum. I think.
Well, back in the day, it's these days a couple of times that I've suffered it's not quite an indignity, but it's an interesting experience
Right.
where but it was it had to do with the rubber glove, and that's all that needed to happen. They kind of
Yeah.
feel around to see if there's anything untoward or to be concerned about, and it's always a bit of a surprise.
Right.
But all right.
Especially a surprise when he's got something sticking up, and he's got both his hands on your shoulder.
Yeah, that's true. How about number 4 there? That sounds like it might be related to this.
Well, this is another quickie. As I said, my job back in those days was to call on furniture retailers around the state. So I was up, again, in the North Country. I can't remember what town I was in. And I had something for dinner the other night, or the night before, that was really bothering me. My stomach was churning. So I went in and made my presentation, talked to the people, and I had this gas attack, like I really had to fart. So I held it until it was all done. I walked out. When I got outside the door, I closed the door, and I let one rip like you wouldn't believe. And I turned around. There were 2 women employees of the store standing right behind me smoking. They'd come up and smoke. So they looked at me I kind of apologized.
It's a good thing you didn't light them up both on fire.
Right.
They were sitting there smoking. It could have been a tragedy.
Right.
And all right, well, you got one more for us before we close this one out?
All right, one more. I'll make this quick. When I worked for Gannett, I was the personnel guy there, and I had responsibilities for a bunch of things, including security. So one morning, Monday morning, I went into work, and as soon as I got there, I had a call from the secretary to the president of Gannett. And she said, "Mr. Anderson, get up here right away." So I go trotting. They were on the 4th floor, so I get up there and I walk in, and she says, "Come here." Well, back in those days, they had executive offices, each with their own
Bathroom. Yeah.
So she brings me in there, she points into the commode and says, "Look at that." And floating around in there were 3 turbs. And she said, when we left here on Friday night, they were not in there, and I want to know who was in here this weekend in Mr. Miller's office and used that toilet. So I said, "Okay."
This is quite the investigation. You're in charge of.
Oh, yeah.
In charge of, yeah.
So I said, "I'll put my best investigator on this right away." So I go down, and Archie, who was my head security guy.
Head of security, yeah.
Yeah, he's a retired Rochester cop. And he comes in and said, "What's going on?" I said, "Well, I was just up there, and there's turds floating around in the commode, and she wants to know who's in there." He said, "I'll get right on it." He came back in about 10 minutes. He said, "I solved the crime." I said, "What happened?" He said, "Well, when I left here Friday night, we had women, I think they were from the Ukraine, who were the cleaners. They went up there and cleaned the offices. And he said, I noticed that one of them had their kid with them, about a 6 or 7-year-old kid." So I thought, aha. So he said, "I called her." She said, "Yes, my babysitter didn't come, so my kid had to come with me. And I think he might have gone in there and used the bathroom and not flushed." So I'm back up to see the secretary. I said, "Case solved." And I told her what we had found out. So thereafter, I had in my file the case of the phantom shitter.
Well, I'm glad that you could find that out so quickly, and you might have looked at the size and surmised something.
Well,
but,
I'm not a good judge of that stuff. I don't know
yeah.
what the hell, All I knew was there were turds floating around.
Well, as a quick bonus, let's do a quick bonus.
All right.
Pick one that you can recall, and
Well, this is kind of a quickie. It has to do with a friend of mine. This is probably, 15, 20 years ago. But she went in a store someplace, I think it was in Jamestown. And she said, there was a sign there, and it said, "Senior Citizen Discounts of 15%. So she said to the clerk, "How old do you have to be to qualify for the discount?" And the clerk said to her, "Don't worry, lady, you qualify." The ultimate put down.
You're old enough.
You're old enough. Right.
All right, we'll wrap up this episode of the podcast, and we will be back for more. And they just keep coming, right? They just keep coming.
They just keep
never-ending stories.
The material, it keeps growing and growing.
And there's more to come, maybe. Maybe we're looking forward to future podcasts that happen in the future. Right. All right, we're going to close this one out.